How's it going, everyone? Mufar here. Welcome to Heliopolis Radio. Today, I've been fortunate to be joined by Mark Smith, an Army veteran and a motivational speaker. He's here to share his story, actually incredible story of really transformation and self-redemption. So, without further ado, I hand it over to you, Mike. The space is yours. Tell us about yourself, where you born, and yeah, just a bit about your background.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me on first and foremost, Mafaro. It's a pleasure being here with everybody. Um, just to clarify one thing, I was in the Air Force, not the Army, but that's okay. So starting from the beginning, everybody, I was born in Aberdeen, South Dakota, to an Irish Catholic family. There was myself and I have four siblings. So my parents had five kids to raise, and my dad was a manager for the J.C. Penney clothing store, which is pretty much all getting shut down these days because of Amazon. But the point being, when he was working for that chain, they moved him around a lot because he was a store manager. So there's a lot of instability for me and the kids growing up because, as soon as we'd start making friends in the neighborhood, we'd have to get up and move again. Um, so I'll fast forward everybody in the topic because there's so much to cover. Uh, I moved from Aberdeen when I was 3 to a town in the central part of Minnesota, the state of Minnesota, called Sauk Center. And from 3 years of age to 12 years of age, that's where I lived and moved into like 4 or 5 different places to live within the Sauk Center before my dad lost his job at the J.C. Penney chain. He was actually let go. And so we were out of options as a family. They did have a life savings of some kind. So my dad thought it was a good idea. My mom thought he was nuts to move from Sauk Center up to a little town right outside of Fargo, North Dakota, about a half hour down the highway, called Barnesville, Minnesota. And that's where I graduated high school. So I'm moving now from 12 up until age 15. I only had one friend in high school, and John was his name. And John and I started getting into a lot of trouble by smoking marijuana and drinking and having a good time when we were, way too young to be doing it. And so when I was 15, everything got tossed upside down because my dad wound up having a massive heart attack at 15 and died. And then I'm a two-time suicide survivor, and right after he died was my first suicide attempt. I
Mm,
was very depressed because my mom was making it clear to all the family that we were going to lose our house, we were going to lose our little family clothing store. That was what the business idea was he was trying to get
mm,
accomplished. But that was going under. So I wound up in the Air Force right after high school. So, but yeah, at 15, I did try to kill myself, and then
mm,
hung on for the last couple of years of high school before they just said, get out of here because my grades were so bad.
mm,
But anyway, so I got a certificate with all D minuses basically and wound up in the Air Force. So now that I'm in there, the partying continued. I saw God's hand at work in the whole thing. Now that can look back on it all, I just turned 60 in October,
mm,
but I was running from God. There were all these people saying, well, Mike, please come to church with us
mm,
and do this, do that. And I was just, no, thank you. I'm going to sit here with my buddies and have a good time in my room and ignore all that noise. And so now, about 2.5 years into my 4-year hitch, we all got caught for smoking marijuana in the military. And this was in the 1980s. So that was when the Reagan administration was in power. And of course, Nancy had her big war on drugs. So their stance was very anti drug on every front. So they didn't give us any second chances. They
mm,
said, basically, the choice you people have is to fight this in a military court, and if you lose, you're going to go to Leavenworth for the minimum of 6 months to a year doing hard labor, or we can give you a medical discharge under misconduct, which is what I took, and walked out the back gate and never looked back on it. So I moved up to back to Fargo Moorhead, wound up meeting up with my ex. I became roommates with this guy. We rented a house together in Moorhead and worked out all the time. So now I'm off drugs, I'm off everything. And I write about what happened next when I was living in that house with Don Matthews, as his name was, my roommate. And Donnie was a 5th-degree black belt in Taekwondo. So he got me in the best shape of my life. But before we started coming on the air and recording right now, I shared, or Mustafa had read the sample chapters, and guys can do the same thing on my website, where I talk about how the suicide, where I came close to taking my own life with the shotgun, and it walks you through all that on the sample chapters. And I should just mention my website quick. It's theguttergospel.com, where you can find all the material. I did write my autobiography that just got published 2 months ago out in New York, and I give that away for free on my website at the bottom of the homepage. If you just read the homepage, it takes you right to the PDF in the bottom. So I write about all these journeys and trouble that I got into in life, and I was placed in psych wards, homeless shelters, civil commitments in 2 states, which means you lose all your freedoms. So, and then I was actually institutionalized because it got that bad with my mental health. My mental health doctor came and visited me from the VA and saw me in jail, and I was completely naked, covered head to toe in my own feces. And when he saw that, his recommendation, which everybody followed along with, the courts and everybody, saying that I need to be committed until I could get my medications balanced. So that gives you all a very brief nutshell view of kind of what I've been through in life. And I can fill in a lot more because obviously you're going to have some questions, but I have bipolar disorder, and as I mentioned, I'm a two-time suicide survivor. But now these days, the name of my book is The Gutter Gospel, and then the subtitle is The Road to Redemption. And when I talk these days to anybody on a podcast or just on the streets or wherever I go, I always share with them that everybody on this planet has a unique purpose, a unique story, a unique point of view that are all worth listening to. God doesn't make mistakes. When he was dealing with me through my journey, because like I said a minute ago, I can look back and see his hand was at work the whole time. And now I'm basically a story of how bad things can get and how much redemption power there is in the cross.
No, thank you for sharing that, Mike. And I truly commend you for the journey through the darkness. A lot of people don't understand what true darkness is till their life is turned upside down. And a lot of us go through it multiple times, multiple renditions of these dark nights, and very few come out alive, truthfully. And I'm not being morbid or
Yes.
anything, but very few people make it out on the other side. It's something short of the greatest miracle on earth that you made it through what you did. And I guess, that now at your age, you're at a bit more, you're at a stage where you can look back at your life and kind of reassess a lot of the things that maybe your childhood does. And the reason I mention it is just, from what I've read about trauma, our childhood is a central focal point through what we did. And do you feel that a lot of what you did was handling the grief and the loss that you'd experienced earlier on without necessarily realizing it? When we lose people that we love,
Yeah.
a lot of, especially a parental figure, we try to fill in, there's a whole void of responsibility that weighs on our soul. And when you're young, it can really be somewhat traumatic. And few people understand it because we all go through everyone's life is different, everyone's held different cards. But those of us who go through loss early, we feel a certain level of bitterness as to why the universe would make us have to go through something that requires so much effort and, strength at an early stage that we kind of get overwhelmed and we throw it all away. And do you feel that in your early stage, was that something that maybe was affecting you? And if so, is there any suggestions you'd have for people maybe my age? Because we all go through stuff, and a lot of young people may tune into this and may not be in a similar situation to you, but they may have a shoulder of responsibility that is overwhelming them. And to prevent them from going through a much more difficult and painful route, using your own experience, would you suggest anything that maybe in terms of an internal reflection, an honest conversation with yourself, or just the ability to be vulnerable, particularly as men? It's hard to cry and it's hard to accept that things hurt. And so we shoulder it and we lie and we do all sorts of things to avoid pain. So I don't know if I worded the question correctly.
No, you did perfectly fine. I can answer you and say that you're exactly right when you were saying that, it was a trauma at a tough age. And, I look at the world today and I see how the young people in today's society have it so much worse off than I did.
Mm,
Um, of course, I mentioned losing my dad and that I tried taking my own life right after
mm,
that. But to answer your question more in depth is to say my suggestion for those people that are struggling at a young age and have experienced loss, maybe they're now being raised by their grandparents or,
mm,
something else because the family structure of the traditional family is pretty much a past
mm,
thing in around the world. So, from that vantage point, I feel like I was kind of fortunate growing up. But then, when my dad passed away, what was going through my head is, God, how in the hell could you do this to us at
mm,
now? After all the stuff we had been through in our life.
mm,
And I remember when this one of the last mental health wards I was on, this doctor came in and he had a big stack of all my medical files from all these different places I'd been in. And he said, Mike, if nobody's ever told you this in your life, let me be the first to say how sorry I truly am that you had to go through all this crap. And I just broke down because it
mm,
was like you said, Mafaro, it was like all this built up sorrow that I never really processed. And when I do these podcasts now, that is a lot of therapy for me to
mm,
get my message out there. And so this is a long way to answer you, but I'm trying to cover it as best I can, is to say that if you are struggling at any age, I did put those helplines on my website as well. If you go right over from the home tab, there's help for everybody is the name of the tab, and there's links
mm,
in there either for a prayer line or a suicide prevention line or whatever. But I got involved in the church. Now it
mm,
just so happens that tonight I'm leading a men's group again over in Moorhead. There's a group of about 5 or 6 of us, but it's hard to reach out when you have so much pain you're dealing with. You
mm,
don't know who's actually going to be giving you a sincere,
mm,
honest answer or listening. So another thing I do is when I'm on these podcasts is to say, email me direct if nobody else, if you can't trust anybody else. So I get my personal email out attached to my business, which is Mike at theguttergospel.com. And I'll do my best to answer you or, you can try calling me after I get an email response to you or whatever. And I'm trying to do it one person at a time. And it's quite an overwhelming task. There's a lot of people in this world, And I see that every time I do one of these and I hear those responses. But at the same time, like I said, that's really what my life has become. And I think,
Mm,
after everybody walks through all those dark times, like you were describing and I was describing, the good news is there's the road to redemption on the other side, the way back. And when you said that those numbers are pretty, that I'm kind of a miracle on the planet, that I survived it all, you're actually pretty accurate when you say that, because for one thing, I'm a 100% service connected disabled veteran,
mm,
and that's only 20% of the military veterans that get that rating. And then I also have on my custom shirts 22 veterans per day,
mm.
and that's the number that take their own life of veterans per day in the country. And that number now is at 17.6. To be more accurate, it's gone down a little bit, either because they're all just dying off of suicide,
Mm.
or people are actually starting to reach out for help. So that's what I'm trying to do on my own to the best of my ability.
Wow. No, no, thank you for the service that you do, truly. And thank you for doing it from a good heart, from an honest place. It's not that it's a rare thing in today's world, but sincerity is, it's a very, very, very tough thing to maintain in this life, in this type of society we live in with all the problems and stuff. So thank you.
You're
And I
welcome.
was gonna ask your journey to sobriety. That's never easy. We're all addicts in one way or another to something or someone. How has it been? How have you seen yourself evolve mentally, just in terms of your strength in order to handle your temptations, to manage because we all have memories that will always recur, that always play. Our mind will always play tricks on us. A lot of the times usually at the worst possible times. So I guess your journey just to being clean as we possibly can, obviously. What's that
Right.
look like for you? What are some of the things that you've managed to cultivate within yourselves mentally and obviously in your heart to kind of have the strength to stay on the path that you've decided to take?
Well, that's a good question too. I think that what helps me a lot is what I kind of started to share just a minute ago. With those small groups, I read out of the Life Recovery Bible, and that's God's view of like what He looks upon people that struggle, um, how He sees that in His eyes.
Mhm,
Keeping in mind, of course, that He loved us all, died for us. So
mhm,
when we read out of that and we take the time to actually delve into each one of these issues,
mhm,
whether it's dealing with alcohol dependency or
mhm,
drug dependency or gambling or you
mhm,
name it,
mhm,
whatever the problem is, it's taking it, encapsulating it, and taking the time to actually say, okay, let's read in depth about this, because it always supplies footnotes and sidebars to take the Gospels apart piece by piece and kind of explain them more in depth to you. So that's really the one tool that helps me a lot, both by reading it on my own as well as teaching out of it
mhm,
about every other week or every third week. When they want me to lead, and tonight, like I said, happens to be another one of those. But those people are so honest and sincere about their struggles too,
mhm,
as I am, that it's just a great community to be involved with. And I think if people hearing my voice can reach out and actually take the time to whatever church they attend, that's not really the point. The point is reach out and see what small groups they offer and try and get involved in those, because it took me years to get up the strength after everything I'd been through, because I thought, if I ever shared everything like I just did with you and your audience in all fullness and sincerity and honesty, everybody would think I'm nuts.
mhm,
So I don't feel like I'm, you know, too eager to get involved with anybody to be open and honest about my problems. But
mhm,
once I did, that was like the hold on me started to break slowly but surely. So
Wow, incredible. And I guess firstly, thank you for sharing that. Again, for being honest and raw. I guess it's always good to have more sincere conversations, particularly humanity. As human beings, we need to interact with each other truthfully. I think there's a great level,
yeah.
as you mentioned, of healing that really happens. And I guess in terms of writing your book, yeah, trauma is such a personal thing, and we're selfish with it, to be honest, because the wounds are so deep. Yeah, we feel that they only belong to us. So to share that with the world and to strip yourself of that pain, um, honestly, I even think about it I don't know if I would even be able to do it, just personally standing. And maybe that's a spiritual journey in of itself that we all need to walk at some point, is being able to translate our pain to share with others. But how was the process of writing the book? How restorative was it to your well-being, and how has it been seeing how other people within the community have responded to you, people reaching out to you with their stories and sharing their experiences? And yeah, I'm just maybe curious to see what that process was like.
Well, I always tell people it was a very cathartic experience to be writing and journaling all those years as I was going through all my troubles in life, because I didn't have anybody really to rely on. I'm married, but my wife was saying, until you get your medications balanced, you got to be in, like, as an example, she called the cops on me when I was trying to get out of one of the homeless shelters and get back to Fargo, because I wanted a bus ride to get back to home so I could just get some rest. And
Mm,
so she called the cops on me, and I wound up going to another jail. So,
mm,
there's a lot of healing that has to be done
mm,
in that relationship as well.
mm,
So, nothing's all perfect and red roses in Mike's garden. There's still a lot of um, healing and time, that
mm,
has to take place. Right now, there's so many things I can say, but I'm not sure what topic to start off on, because there's so much going into that book
mm,
that I just thought, I just need to be honest and put it all out there. I remember this friend of mine. I was driving a cab at night, and so was he. He was like my only friend when I was doing that.
mm,
And he came over to my house, and I was journaling about what it was like to be a cab driver at night with all the bar crowd people, college kids, and everybody making fun of you because, oh, you're just a cab driver and all this
mm,
other stuff. So I would go home and I would journal this one chapter of my book, which didn't make the final cut, but I should have put it in there because
mm,
it was so long. The topic was Isolation Island, and I put that title on it because it was like I felt like I was the loneliest man on the planet. So I just journaled, and he was reading this, and he said to me, "Mike, where does all this stuff come from?" And I said, "It comes from just a lot of pent up pain and feeling like absolute garbage about myself." And so that was right around the time then that almost took my life again. That was the second suicide attempt. So I started to hang myself in the basement of my house. And this little still quiet voice said to me as I was stringing myself up, "Mike, you still have a purpose in life." And I just broke down and got all emotional. And I still sometimes, when I share that on my podcast interviews, uh, get choked up thinking about it, because it's like I said at the beginning, God had his hand on my shoulder, carrying me through all those times.
yeah. Yeah, it's not a easy thing to talk about, especially something that's morbid and difficult. But again, just a miracle of you coming through all of that and being able to come onto podcasts like these I can tell you that it is truly a story of grace, and it's remarkable and it's inspirational in many ways. So, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. It's not easy uh,
Yeah,
to
I
have,
appreciate that.
no, truly.
Well, like
And
I said, there's something that comes out of each one of these podcasts. They're always different, and that's what I get in feedback in the emails. It's like I had no idea because I was going to attempt suicide or I was this and I was that. And that's what we were talking about when this interview began, is that everybody has their own journey, their own story. And when I sum everything up these days with people, I say, we're all here for one purpose, and that's to carry out as best as we can the Great Commission, which is to go into all the world and preach the gospel and bring others to faith in Christ. And if that's my one goal, I think I'm doing a pretty good job these days of finally being able to do it. I joke with people all the time and say, had somebody told me when I was in all those places that one day God would have me sitting in my bedroom in my pajamas, being able to reach the world with the gospel, having survived all of my pain, that I would have told them they were all nuts. But here I am at age 60 doing just that.
it's really something you can't take for granted. As horrible as a lot of that stuff has been, I know that, yeah, it's definitely a reminder that no, good things can come from bad places, for sure. I think our society puts a lot of pressure, particularly with social media, for somewhat of this easy life, or I don't know what perception it puts in our minds, but it really makes it difficult for a lot of people not having that ideal experience to find some joy and hope and trust in this life. So your story is a reminder that, it's not always the case. There's always a different way, a different path. And yes, it's not the ideal path. It's not the path that everyone wants. But at the end of the day, if someone does end up in that circumstance, it's not the end of the world. So I guess the last,
Amen.
thank you. I guess the last few questions is just one is obviously I'm based here in South Africa. Do you work with people outside of the US? Is that something you're looking to do as you expand further, as you reach out to more people? Is there a way for
Yeah,
people outside of the US to contact you? Do you perhaps have any
yeah.
programs that you'd want to start? Because again, your type of story is one that is not just restricted to the West, obviously, and the Western lifestyle and experience. I think pain is
That's the
universal.
amazing part of that's the amazing part about it, Mafaro, because as you're saying that, I'm getting goosebumps because it's like I've already talked to people in the Netherlands, Spain, the UK, Brazil. So, that's why I said it gives me goosebumps, is because it's like you said, it's a story that resonates all around the globe. Everybody's got their own problems. None of us were born perfect, not even Adam and Eve. Going way back from the beginning. So, that being said, take that journey and step up to the plate, and remember that the road to redemption is you're going to be redeemed one day. And as this world just continues to go deeper into their societal decline, we can see the end in sight one way or the other. Something, either you're going to die before the end of the world happens or the end of the world's going to happen.
Very
One way
true.
or the other,
Very true.
everything comes to an end. And I'll share this with you. This is funny too. My brother and I were having a discussion a while back, and he goes, "Well, Mike, there's only three sure things in life. There's the day you were born, paying taxes, then the day you die." And I said, "Well, you know what? I got to correct you, Pat. That's not exactly true because I don't pay taxes with my benefits. So the only true things are you're
Uh,
born and then you die." And it's
wow,
about the journey in between
very
that we
true.
all can share. And when I open up and share my pain, and like I said, sometimes I get choked up, sometimes I don't. But yeah, it's just about the journey and trying to reach people with the good news about Christ, because look at what he suffered. If you think I
Mm,
suffered something, look what he suffered through.
mm,
So because he loves you and wants a relationship with you. So
mm,
that's how I sum it all up. And I'd like to share too that right now my wife and I are planning to go down to the Storytellers Conference. I wanted to get that out to your audience through the ICVM Storytellers. I don't know if you had a chance to check that link out, Mafaro, but in Orlando, coming up October 1st through the 4th, I'm going to pitch my true life story and my book to all the faith-based
mm.
producers, directors, and investors to see it get turned into a movie.
Yeah.
So that's keeping me going forward too, to continue to go out into the world and preach the gospel, coming from the place of all the pain I write about in the book and share with people on the streets or on the podcast. So yes, very
No,
good things are happening these days by God's
no.
grace.
Wishing you the very best of that. And obviously, we trust, obviously, it's one of those things. You trust in a higher power, you trust in God. And the last question I'll ask is your contact details in case people want to reach out to you. And then obviously your words of wisdom and advice for the audience tuning in again.
Okay, contact information again, guys, is first I'll hand you out my website, theguttergospel.com, spelled with two T's on gutter. That's my website. It's been up for 3 or 4 years, but I didn't start doing podcasts until this year. And then contact me directly on my emails that connect right to that website, which is Mike at theguttergospel.com. And it's just that simple. And if, like I said, if you're struggling and I get that email, I'm going to do my very best to speed up my reply to you and try talking you out of suicide or trying to get you help wherever, whatever community you're in, whatever corner of the world you're in. I can reach out to you. If I can't call you long distance from overseas, I can get on a podcast of somebody, or I can email you back. So that'll be the best way to contact me. We're still I'm trying to work on. I'm debating about setting up social media profiles because I'm not good about doing it, but B, it's like I don't know. I've been told I should, and then I think, okay, maybe I shouldn't. So pray about that for me. I got to get that straight one way or the other. So I apologize, guys. It's not up right now, but yeah. And my final advice to people, I think we've all covered that already during this interview, which is, as much pain as you're in, there's always hope on the other side. So reach out to those small groups, reach out to those prayer lines or suicide lines on my website, or reach out to me personally. And there you'll get some answers from somebody who's lived through it all.